How can you use the distributive property to write expressions and solve equations? Think about this question during the lesson. What expressions can you write to represent the number of square units inside the rectangle? Let's find out. Looking at the rectangle, what do you see? You see a rectangle with two parts. What are the dimensions of the rectangle? The dimensions are 6 rows by 18 columns. What are the dimensions of each of the two parts? The dimensions of each of the two parts are 6 rows by 10 columns and 6 rows by 8 columns. There are 3 ways to write expressions that represent the number of square units inside the rectangle. The first way to solve this is to think of 6 rows with 18 in each row. What expression can you write to show this? The expression 6 times 18 shows the number of rows times the number of square units in each row. The second way to solve this problem is to think of 18 as 10 plus 8. What expression can you write to show this? The expression rewrites the length of 18 as 10 plus 8. The third way to solve this problem is to visualize the figure in 2 parts. The orange part contains 6 times 10 square units. The green part contains 6 times 8 square units. What expression do you write to show this? The total number of square units is the sum of the 2 parts. Looking at each expression, what is the value of each? The value is 108 square units. Since the expressions identify the same number of square units, you can write an equation. The distributive property states, multiplying a sum or difference by a number is the same as multiplying each number in the sum or difference by that number and then adding or subtracting the products. If the first expression is 6 times 10 minus 8, what second expression can you write using the distributive property? You can write 6 times 10 minus 6 times 8. Now you know how to use the distributive property to write expressions and solve equations.
Hey guys, today we're going to cover Unit 5, Lesson 5, which takes a look at the distributive property. Now the distributive property is basically a fancy way of saying something that you guys are going to be working on as you get a little bit older and you start moving into pre-algebra and algebra. So we're going to focus on the very basic, distributive property for today, the 5th grade baby version of it. Now the distributive property, if you take a look at the first word, distribute is a fancy way to say give out. So if I say, hey, here's a stack of papers, can you distribute these to everybody in the class? It's a fancy way of saying give give them to everybody in the class. So when we are using the distributive property in math, we're giving a single number to other numbers. So the way it's written, we might want to do 5 times 75. 5 times 75. Now, we've learned in math class from working with variables that when I have two numbers next to each other or a letter and a number next to each other, you're multiplying. So for this case, I could do 5 times 75, or I can just put them next to each other with the 75 in parentheses. So basically what I'm going to do is 5 times 75. Now, we can make this problem easier by breaking 75 into two pieces. I could do 75, I can break it into the tens, which is 7 tens or 70, and 5 ones, which is regular 5. So what I could do for the distributive property is it says that I can give the 5 to the 70, and then the 5 to the 5, and then add those pieces together to get my final answer. I'll show you what that looks like when I write it out. So I could do 5 times 70, whatever that equals, add that to whatever 5 times 5 equals. So I'm going to break 75 into two pieces, 70 and 5, and then I'm going to give that 5 to each one of those. Now, when we work with the distributive property, we're multiplying. So when I say I'm going to give that 5 to each one of those pieces, I mean I'm going to multiply the 5 by each one of those pieces. I just say give because distribute is a synonym for give. So if I do 5 times 70, that's really easy. It's 5 times 7 with a 0, which is 350. And then add that to 5 times 5, which is easy, 25. So put those pieces together. 350 plus 25 is 375. So 75 times 5 equals 375. So really the distributive property and how we use it in 5th grade is super simple. All we're going to do is basically it's saying we're distributing a number, in this case 5, to the pieces of another number, so 70 and 5. Let's take a look at another one. What if I wanted to do 3 times 46? 3 times 46. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break the 46 into tens and ones. And if you say it out loud slowly, you actually hear the tens and the ones. 46. So 40 plus 6. So I'm going to give that 3 to the 40 and then give that 3 to the 6. And remember, by give, I mean multiply, and then add the pieces back together. So when I write it out individually, I get 3 times 40. Whatever that equals, I'm going to add together to whatever 3 times 6 equals. So I'm just distributing the 3 to each one of these pieces, distributing the 3 to the 40 and distributing the 3 to the 6, and it ends up being 3 times 46, same thing. So 3 times 40, it's the same as 3 times 4 plus a 0 at the end, which is 120. Now I'm going to add that to the product of 3 times 6. 3 times 6 equals 18. And if I put those two pieces together, I get 138. So 3 times 46 equals 138. When you get into higher level math, when you start doing 6th, 7th, 8th grade math, you're going to look at the distributive property by giving the 3 to each one of these pieces. So you would do 3 times n, which equals 3n, times 3 times 6, which equals 18. So when you get into fancier math, this is how the distributive property works. But because we're just starting to use variables, we're looking at the baby version of the distributive property, which is basically I'm just going to take that number and I'm going to distribute it, in this case the 3, to two different pieces of 46, 40 plus 6. So I'm basically giving that 3 by multiplying to the two different pieces. Let's try another one. Let's try 12 times 43. 12 times 43. We'll keep the first number, the 12, and we'll break the 43 into two pieces, 40 and 3. So I'm going to give the 12 to the 40. I'm going to multiply it. When I say give, I'm going to multiply it. And then I'm going to give the 12 to the 3. If I write that out, I get 12 times 40 plus 12 times 3. Now the reason I'm writing it in parentheses, remember we've been talking about, variables. We learned about parentheses before, and we know that the rule with parentheses is we always have to do what's inside of the parentheses first. Parentheses are those little like sideways smiley faces. If you put the little dots, you'd get a smiley face. So parentheses are those little sideways, the mouth part of a smiley face. That's kind of what the parentheses are. So the rule with math is you always do the parentheses first. So the way I wrote this here, it tells me that I have to multiply what's in the parentheses first, multiply what's in the parentheses over here, and then add those two pieces together. So that's why I'm using the parentheses, because I have to remember that I need to multiply first before I add my other product. So I'm going to do 12 times 40. Remember, 12 times 40 is the same as 12 times 4, which is 48, plus a 0 at the end. And then 12 times 3 is 36. So 480, let's be careful and not do this in our head. That's how we make simple mistakes. And I get 516. All right, so all you're going to do is you're going to give your first number to the two pieces of your second number. You're going to break it into the tens, break it into the ones, then you're going to multiply your first number by each one of those pieces, and then put them together to get your final answer. Really easy, very similar to what we did when we worked back, in the previous units, Unit 2, with, multi-digit multiplication. Let's try another one. See if you guys can do it. Let's do 8 times 72. 8 times 72. Pause the recording here. Break your problem into pieces. Distribute the 8 to each one of those pieces, and then see if you can figure out what 8 times 72 equals. Go ahead and pause the recording now, and then hit play once you're ready to go. All right, let's see if we got it right. So in order to do the distributive property, I'm just going to give my first number, the 8, to the two pieces of my second number. So I'm going to take the 72 and I'm going to break it into two pieces. I can break it into 70 and 2. And I'm going to give the 8, I'm going to multiply the 8 to each one of those pieces. So I'm going to do 8 times 70, and then add that to whatever 8 times 2 equals. Well, 8 times 70 is the same as 8 times 7, 56, with a 0 at the end. And I'm going to add that to whatever 8 times 2 is, which is 16. Now I have 560 plus 16, which equals 576. So 8 times 72 is the same as 576. So really easy. You're just distributing your number to the two pieces in your second number. Let's try one more. Let's try 12 times 47. 12 times 47. Go ahead and hit pause, see if you can solve it on your own, and then hit play once you're ready to try it out. Okay, so let's try it out. So my first number is 12. I'm going to give 12 to the two pieces in 47. 40 and 7. So I'm breaking 47 into two pieces, 40 and 7, and I'm giving the 12 to both of those. So I'm going to do 12 times 40 plus 12 times 7. So I'm taking that 12 and giving it to the two pieces in 47. 12 times 40 is the same as 12 times 4, 48, with a 0 at the end, plus 12 times 7, which is 84. If I add those together, let's line them up so that we're getting the right answer. Whoops. $564. And when in doubt, go ahead and check your work. So if you're not 100% certain that you did it right, check your work. 12 times 47 equals 564. Great job, guys. Go ahead and try your follow-up questions and let me know if you have any questions. Really easy if you just think of the distributive property as giving your first number, giving your number to two pieces in your smaller number. So you're just distributing or giving those pieces, that number to the other pieces. Great job today, guys. Good luck.